Okay, so good afternoon and welcome to Sunday Watercolours. We're going to Honfleur again, so I'm going to start the drawing with where the water meets the land. So sometimes in watercolours we don't get to see the horizon. So when that occurs, it's just a good idea to take the straightest line that you can find that is obvious. Now there's two in this one, at least two. One is the water line, which I'll share with you now, which is somewhere along there. You can see it's directly underneath the pier where the boats are moored against the harbour wall. The other line, which could be useful to you, which I think is very similar, is the harbour wall. And we've drawn that before in our other tasks with Honfleur in mind. And so this one has what I would call two action lines, really, that you could start with. I'm going to start with the water and be generous, I guess, is a way to explain it, with where you're going to put your water. Because if I just move the resource up a little bit, there we go, you can see a bit more water there. That's better, isn't it? I would like as much of those long reflections in the paper as possible. So I'm going to start off with a line approximately 2/5 of the way down or up, I guess you could say. If you're not sure about your proportions, find something that will fit 5 times. One, and you can gauge with your fingers like this or use your pencil. It doesn't really matter as long as it fits 5 times. And of course, you could use a tape measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's perfect. So if I go back down to the bottom now and count 2, 1, 2, you see where it brings me? About here. So it is around about 2/5. I might be a little bit higher up, a little bit lower down. It doesn't really matter. And as long as it's close, because I'm going to stretch those reflections anyway. So let's just start off with getting the tilt. I think it's tilting slightly down to the right, just ever so slightly. If that was 15 minutes past the hour, tilt it slightly down to the right and you'll get your perspective. It looks like I'm doing the harbour wall. So I'll do the harbour wall first. There it is. Very simple. And then the water line is, I'm going to say, is pretty much parallel. So I'm just going to do another little line underneath it. And that gives me my starting point for water and for land. So good luck with that. It's possible to use a ruler. Many watercolorists take a ruler with them. It's not like it's cheating or anything. It's fine. I prefer to do it by hand and eye. There probably will come a day when I will need a ruler. So I'm going to try my best to keep that at bay for as long as possible. Now, at the top here, I have another action line, and this is where the land meets the sky. So you can see there's a sort of I'm going to dare to say, a Zen kind of idea going on here. We are talking about the elements in watercolor. That's not a bad way to see it, because if you see it as elements, then you understand action lines. Action lines can be background, middle ground, foreground, or in this case, it can be where the buildings end and the trees and the sky begins. So I'm putting another action line in now. Now to get this percentage, I would say it's a quarter of the way down. So this time I'm going to gauge something that fits 4 times on my page. 1, 2, 3, finally the fourth. So you can see that's about a quarter of the way down. And once more, it doesn't have to be exact. You can pull it up, down a little bit, whatever you feel fits for your intentions. I kind of like the feeling of these old harbour buildings being very tall, and I could imagine at some point, they might have had different purposes than providing wonderful accommodation for holiday makers and tourists. Perhaps they were warehouse buildings, so being tall meant you could store more. So I want to make them tall. I like this idea. So the taller, the better. So I'll give you a moment to get there. And then, of course, we're going to start to divide this area into buildings. So that should be our next stage. Okay. Now, when it comes to designing your watercolor, you're going to be thinking about where are the colorful areas in the scene. I like the beautiful canopies. We've looked at those before in the last painting, and they occupy an action zone as well. So I'm going to put that in. It's roughly here. Let's see if I can do it in white, because white seems to be a good color to show where they are. So it's there. It's kind of running at the bottom of the building. I'm just going to sketch it in, not even think about the proportion because it's so small. It's a tenth of something. So that's where I'm going to put my canopies. And then there's another thing that goes on in these medieval buildings. Do you see here on the very, very old ones? They not only did they maximize the height of the warehouse, but they also, at some point, started to build outwards. And so there's like structures building outwards. And that's very interesting. A bit like those of you who've been to Florence on the Ponte Vecchio, the way the houses are on the bridge and they are put on props that stick out from the bridge and then they build upwards from there. So there's a 3 or 4 of these sort of buildings over here, and they're sort of propped up and come out towards the water. Those are interesting because they look almost like something out of a Grimm's fairy tale. They've got amazing roofs. So I'm just going to build that line there. It doesn't have to be straight. These buildings are not straight, or they look straight enough, but they're old and they move this way and that. So I'm just putting a little line here. I don't think it's halfway. I've probably come too far. Let's pull it back in, maybe a third, something like that. Then I'm going to take a diagonal towards the chimney stack. There you see. That diagonal is about 45 degrees, something like that. So that's about 12, 13 minutes, 12 minutes past the hour, something like that. So that's the angle I'm after. And that will do 2 things. It will tell me the angle of the roof. Northern Europe has these quite steep inclines on the roofs. And then it's probably because of all the rain, just lay it off the roof quickly. And then here, that line will also tell me where I'm going to put the chimney. So I'm just going to sketch a quick rectangle, like a little brick on the top. This will be a chimney. So this is all the blue-grey buildings on the left that come out from the scene towards us. And then we can go on our way towards the left, drawing small buildings, hotels, accommodation, shops, etc., as they go to the left. Now, the last time we met, I was not trying to copy like a photograph, and I'm not going to do that this time either. So I'm going to just use some little action lines, like I'm going to call these plumb lines. So these are plumb lines, and they tell me roughly where the main bands of color are. So I've got this blue-gray. I'll clear them off actually and start again because that's a dreadful job. Here we go. So that's where these blue-gray ones end. And then sandwiched between the next group is a small sienna, raw sienna colored building. So that's in the middle, pretty much in the middle of the page, very close at least. So I'm just going to sandwich a very thin building there. Thin and tall. Remember, I did say you can use a ruler if you prefer. If you prefer. So these are all blue, grey. This one's a sienna color. That's where its canopy is. And then above it, there's a little white part. sometimes it's just a good idea just to get your bearings a little bit. So that's fine. I'm not drawing the roof yet. The roofs are complicated. We'll come to that. And then next we have another block of blue faced buildings, this lot here. And if you were to think about the space from the center here to the left, it's not quite halfway, a little bit closer than halfway. But you can change these things to how you wish it to be. If you were doing a studio painting with unlimited time, you could be as exacting as you wish. But I'm going to just leave that as the blue buildings. That's the sienna one. And then there's another sienna colored building sandwiched here. Small one here. It's a little bit wider than that one, seemingly. So I'll make it a little bit wider, not a lot, just a little bit. And that brings me nicely to there. Now, at the end of the line of buildings, there's a squashed little house all on its own, seemingly squashed, because in the photograph, at least what I shared with you, you can see that that's where the harbour wall runs this way and then it turns the other way. I will open the photograph out a little bit more because I have not shared all of Suzanne's photograph. Look, you can see there's more of it there. But I just felt it didn't add anything more other than complexity. So I'm leaving it out. And the reason being because I don't want to eat up any more time drawing buildings. I want to get onto reflections. So I'm going to draw that little house that's framed between the corner. And if you look, it's another very characterful house. It's this one here with a nice little roof there. So I'm going to just sketch that one in, sort of sandwiched between this space and that. Okay, so it's a little roof that goes this way and then down. And there we are. So that's my, in a nutshell, that is my composition for the buildings. We are going to be doing more detail on the roof though. So I'll give you a moment to get there. I'm clearing off some drawings off the screen now. There we go. Remember that this image is from Unsplash, so it's supplied, free of charge, copyright free. And the photographer, at least, of this photograph is Suzanne Dorst. So if you've got to there, what I'd like to do now is start to draw these roofs, and they sort of stagger about a little bit, like steps. Do you see this sort of step upwards? That's a nice way to observe the different heights of the building before you put the pitches of the roof on. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to stagger this little step there on the, remember this little house here. That meets this line and then it goes up a little and then across. So let them stagger and step upwards. And in this way, not only will you give it a more complex feel, which it is quite complex, isn't it? But you'll also achieve another thing, and that being that your study will have more movement, more light, more complex.
John, sorry to interrupt. Can I just interrupt you? Can somebody tell me how to pin you? Because somehow I've touched something and I've lost you. I've got everybody. And I know I can pin you, but I can't remember which button I pressed to.
Okay, so I was just staggering these roofs going upwards, and I'm really not attempting to copy what I'm seeing at all. It's an impression of what I feel I'm seeing. I remember that this one building here was raw sienna. So that one's a bit lower than the blue ones. So I'll just pull that one down and maybe push these up a bit. That's better because there's a group in the middle, which I feel, there we are. So that's a bit closer, I guess, to the feel. Take that one out. Then there's this very small blue one. So I'm going to drop it down a little bit. So it's almost like stocks and shares graphs, you'd sort of see some a bit more, some have a bit more height and some are a little bit lower. This tall one that's going to link RI to this group here is a very interesting one because we see all of the dimensions that are visible. So we see its side, which is like a triangle. There we go. So that's what I'm going to start to cut into this now. This is how I'm going to make it more three-dimensional. Now, of course, you could take your time with this in a studio painting and get it very exacting indeed. And that would be great if you were, wishing to enter it into competitions or I'm guessing even sell it as a study of Honfleur. But for me, it's about the watercolor class itself. So as I put this little chimney stack on there, I just bolted onto that little triangular shape. And now I know that that's the side of the building, which is nice. There is a further detail, which is you might see that there's a little dormer window, TV aerials, etc. I'll come back to those, but for now I've got the difficult roof complete, I will now go back and fill in the other roof systems. Okay, so they're not too tricky. Let's go back to this one down here just to show you that all of these roofs, because they're going away to the left, the tilt is pointing down to the left. So do you see it's pointing down to the left, each one. And then you just cut in with a ridge line. Now, just for the sake of the class, keep it very close to parallel to the wall plate, because as we drew those boxes previously, the top line is the wall plate that the roof is sitting upon. And if you then draw that angle going down to the left, this line, which is what we call the ridge of the roof, the ridge line is parallel to the wall plate, pretty much. There is a very small point though, that if this is the same height from here to here as will be from here to here, as this goes away from us, this should converge a little bit. And of course, as this side comes towards us, it will diverge, meaning this will get a little bit longer. But on a small drawing like this, it's hardly noticeable. So you will get away with it being parallel. But remember, if you want a truer perspective, it should follow the principles of perspective more fully. And so I recommend a small divergence as you go away from the roof. Okay, hope that makes sense. If not, just draw them parallel and you'll be fine. So there we go, put another chimney. I'm just bolting the chimneys on as I go. And then this roof here, which is the small one that's squashed in between, it has a long roof too. And I just put that in. You see now what was once a stocks and shares graph is now looking like a little roof line. And that's really easy, isn't it? It's not difficult when you break it down. Give you a moment to get there, and then we're going to come back to this little special area of interest where the medieval buildings have much more going on. But if you're already through and you're drawing that, well done. If you don't want to wait for the others to finish, just put your chimneys in. You can draw some dormer windows, some little squares on the roof, like so, with a little triangle, like so, on the top. And then you angle a line which is parallel to this roof line, pretty much. And in that way, as you bring this roof line back to the roof, look what happens. You get a little dormer window. So even these things are not difficult to achieve. And you don't necessarily need to draw it particularly perfectly to get it to feel like a dormer window. So have fun drawing dormer windows whenever you're having to wait for others to finish. Okay, so another minute I'm drawing this area, and then I'm going to come into this area here. But in the meantime, just going to draw some dormer windows. There we go, a few more. It's interesting though that you can actually get away with suggesting and not necessarily being too faithful to the photograph. We're always after an impression, and sometimes you can get a much better impression when you deviate from the photograph quite a lot, you know. So at the halfway point, I'm going to show you some other watercolorist ideas about how to deviate from what you're seeing and give it a minimalist approach, which would be nice actually to see how far you can push this idea of minimal copying of the photograph and maximizing the impression. Okay, so this is where artists also need to develop skills, because when you're out and about painting, especially on plein air, you don't have necessarily 3 or 4 hours. You might only have an hour max or an hour and a half. And so you kind of got to find a way to say more with less. All right. Hope you finished that idea. So we're going to move on to this little grouping here. With this little grouping here, I'm going to be very specific straight away with that roof. This is very important, that little brown roof. And as I build that, you'll also see that this one has an amazing roof. It's got a double pitched roof here. It's kind of like one overhanging another, which that's quite remarkable. Is those little dormers peeping out, and it goes back. So it gives you a strange impression. And down here, you can see more closely, look, this little grouping here, there's a sort of a pitch roof here, and then above it, like another layer, the roof overhangs that. And there's dormers intertwined. It's really beautiful and quite organic, you know, that medieval way of building. So I'm going to start in this corner here with the wall plate. The little brown roof is just a little bird's beak, like so. That's nice. And I'll just draw in a little pointer for the face of the building, because that will tell me now that I can go upwards. I'm going to build this little hip for the roof that comes slightly out, like a collar. And then it carries on a little bit higher. And then there's another roof bolted on top, which comes out in front of our bird beak. That was nice, and that's fun to do it that way, I guess, because then what we can do is, if that was the bottom of the first box of the building, the next one is slightly higher up. Do you see? It's on stilts. There's little wooden lathes going back, like so, holding this thing together and upright. And a little bit like Harry Potter, I'm going to maximize these sort of deviations in the wood, because as the wood has been there probably 500 years or something, I think what's happened is the wood has relaxed, and as it should do, and it twists a little bit. And so that looks nice in the drawing. I'm going to do another little box here, which is next to that. And then on top of that, again, there's another little roof that comes down. Now, these roofs are all joined into each other, but they are different colors. So they have obviously different tiles, probably from different owners over the years, fixing and patching up their roofs. So once you've got that covered, I'm not doing any more than that. I think that's enough. Then what I'll do is I'll start to put windows and things in. Some of you have probably already got to there. So if you have got to there, don't wait for us. You can begin putting dormer windows in. I'm not even going to try and put the exact amount in, but on top of this line here, I think there's three. So the little triangles are like this, sitting on top of that line. And then below it, a little rectangle with four glass panes, which is the dormer window, like so. So that was nice. And you can even start to draw in the lines for the windows if you wish, like so. It gives it that feeling already. And if you wanted to, you could use pen and ink to draw over your watercolor either before or after the painting. If you wanted to make it more sketch-like, that's fine. I'm just going to try and copy just as if I was free drawing these windows. I'm going to put the bigger ones in. So there's two below the middle section here. There's no particular rule that says you should do one window first and this one next. It's like collecting coins off a countertop. You pick them up as you go, and the drawing will feel richer for everything you collect. There we go. So that looks better already, that little building. I'm quite happy with that. And I'll do the bigger one next to it. It's not the same, is it? It's not so symmetrical. It's got a smaller kind of, it's got a big dormer window in the middle, and then the smaller one that's blue, light blue next to it, which is fun. And then halfway up the roof, there's another dormer window. We are. Maybe Turner himself stayed in one of these buildings when he was there painting. Who knows? So that looks okay. I'm kind of feeling that that will work. I'm not going to draw every window because I can paint them. But if you're quick at drawing and you're happy just to, and you don't necessarily with these medieval towns have to get the windows looking perfect. It'll work. You'll see. So I'm happy with that. I'm ready to move along the line. If you're still working on it, don't worry. The rest of us can be drawing little chimney pots on the top of the chimneys. Oh, there's a roof that's coming across here, which joins this group of the buildings. Forgot to say that. There it is. So I'm going to put that in. Gives me even more depth behind this group. So that's nice. And then looking at this building here, there's one window below the dormer window exactly. And then either side of it on the next level, because there's another 3 levels before we get towards the street, 3 or 4 levels. There's double pairing of columns. So 2 columns and so 2 rows with 2 columns of 4 or 3 windows and a fourth in between. Quite awkward, but lovely nonetheless. And I'm realizing that I'm a little bit out of sync on the building, so I just move things about to make it work. And I would urge you to do the same. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as it feels like what we're seeing. Now, this one in that sandwich, this sienna colored building, that's got 2 columns with 3 in a column. So I'll just put some of those in. There we are. So I'm halfway through. I hope it's helping you to focus on each one in turn. Remember, if you forget any, you can paint them in anyway when we're actually at painting stage. So I'm moving along now. This is the group in the middle, which is a blue frontage, and just making a bit more space for my awnings. Otherwise, I'll run out of space. Now, in this grouping, there's a lot of complicated rows of windows. In the first part, there's 4 columns with 4 rows. And then in the last part, there's 2 columns with 4 rows. So I'm just going to abbreviate. And sometimes when I abbreviate, this is how I do it. I just paint little lines like that. These are the windows. Now, that might seem confusing for some, and if it's confusing you, then draw the windows. But the reason I do that is so that when I'm painting the blue, I can paint around a white rectangle. I'll show you that as I'm doing it. I just find it's a very quick way to get where I want to go. Otherwise, I'll be there for quite some time drawing windows. And even now, I'm having to move them to get them to fit in the column correctly. So there's 4 going down. The next is 2 together. These are taller, higher windows. So this is a nice idea to put them out of sequence, because if I keep it with the sequence of this group, it would read as the same building. And I don't want that to occur. So I'll put these a little bit higher up as they are in the photograph. And already it feels different. And that worked nicely. So these are just some little drawing strategies. I know everybody in this group can draw already, but it might help someone. Now, the sienna coloured building, again, it's got 2 columns with 4 in the column. So I'm just doing little lines. This is a lot easier to paint, I can assure you, later. So as I go away, I'm going to draw thinner windows. Getting to that crunch of the small building in the corner there. I like that building very much, as I said, but it was a bit big, so I'm shrinking it down. It's a small building relatively. Going to quickly sketch the windows in, like so. A couple of dormer windows. They're just little boxes with triangles on the top, like so. Go. So there's the dormer windows. And then finally, at the end of the row, there is another angle of buildings going along the harbour wall as it turns at a right angle. So this is where I will now look at this other building, because when it goes the other way, the roof changes direction. You see, it sort of goes down to the right because its perspective is going away in a different direction. Okay. So these are going away from us to the left, and the buildings that we're seeing are coming from the right, and they'll be pointing down to the right. So that's the easiest way I can explain it. They're at a right angle to this group. So above the little house, if you've, oh, and I didn't put the chimney in. Let's put the little chimney in. That's a nice idea, just to give it a bit more interest. Once you've done that building, then above it, there is a small parallelogram. So it's a wall plate tilting down, this time to the right. Remember, these ones were tilting down to the left. This time they're tilting down to the right. if you don't get it right, if you don't get it exact, don't worry, it'll still work as long as you tilt this angle, definitely the side of the roof down to the right. It's got to point down to the right. And in that way, then when I put the ridge on the top of the roof, it will look as though we meet the other buildings coming towards us. So good luck with that. If you struggle with perspective, remember everyone finds perspective a challenge, not necessarily difficult. Some who've mastered the principles will just enjoy the challenge. So if you're still struggling with perspective, it's something that practice will improve in time. And the more you look at the real world with buildings, real buildings in front of you, just check what's happening on the left-hand side of your nose and what's happening on the right-hand side of your nose as you look at the building. And you'll start to see some patterns, very obvious patterns that emerge. For example, with these buildings going off to the left and these buildings going offwards to the right. So I encourage you to look at the real world if you're struggling with this principle, and it will start to make much more sense as you see it practically happening in front of you. Okay, so there it is. There's my buildings. I'm quite chuffed with that. That was the difficult part. If you've done all of that and you're happy, well done. You can move on to the next stage. But don't forget to put a few trees on the action line. Remember, this is the action line. So this is a tree line. That's the last thing that meets from the earth to the sky on the upwards plane. So we just do a few little cauliflower shapes. And there's a few conifers. They're nice, aren't they? It's always good to have a few other shapes to break the monotony. There we go. And that's going to be the green line of the trees before it meets the sky. I'm not going to draw the clouds. We're going to paint those. So don't worry about the shape of those clouds. I'll show you how to paint those, or at least I'll show you a strategy that can make it feel like them. But as we come down towards the water, there's a lot of canopies, bright canopies and umbrellas, plenty of them actually. Let's just draw a few of these umbrellas, and we're approximately now 2/3 of the way through the drawing process. We're really quite close. So this is an interesting way to approach the canopies. Draw some little triangles. When you're seeing a scene from eye level, which I think this is, the photographer, she's on the other side of the harbour there, and she's at eye level with these canopies and umbrellas. So they kind of look like little triangles, like coat hangers. Now, when beginners start to draw these things, they start to invent all sorts of perspective issues that they don't really see because they're not sure about perspective, but they know about it and they've heard that it'll have an effect, and they start imagining seeing inside the umbrellas and drawing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. My advice is keep these little triangles relatively simple. Do you see that? They're very much like coat hangers. You're not seeing into these umbrellas at all. Don't imagine that you can. You're seeing side view at best. And keep it all sort of in a line. Some are a little bit higher, like I let that one go a little bit higher. And then because it's a bit higher and I made it behind this one, I made this one slightly longer, slightly larger. Same down at the far end of the harbour. I'm going to make the triangles even smaller because they're further away. Okay, hope that makes sense. Once you've done enough, 3 or 4 of these, what I'm going to call umbrellas rather than canopies, You can put a few little lines to imitate because that'll be little cafe areas and restaurant areas. Then what you will have is the actual hanging canopies, these little sheets that come out brightly coloured as they are from the building themselves. So for those, that's not so tricky. All we need to do is break up that line a little bit with some angles pointing slightly down to the left. All of these canopies are going to point to the left because of the principle of perspective. They're going away from us. Some of them are slightly higher up, some of them are slightly lower down, some of them are probably just rectangles because you cannot see where they begin or end because they're very long, and then some of them are more obvious. So have fun just sketching as I did. Go on autopilot. Please don't try to imitate exactly what you see. Try to imitate the feel, the impression. This is what's very important, because in doing such a thing as that, being inventive, using the imagination, what you observe, remember, and imagine, this is the way that an artist can develop their own creativity, makes you feel better, it gives you more power in your composition, at least, because if something's not working in the composition, you can make it work better. Okay. So there we are. And then once you've got your canopies and various other umbrellas, we now need to put the street level. Now you've got the wall. We've got a street. It's not very much of a street from this angle, but there are some tables and chairs. Now, my strategy for drawing tables and chairs is very simple. I keep it really simple. Other artists have more complicated ideas. I try to keep it very simple, to be fair. So let's actually analyze what we're seeing. You are seeing various tables, which are like squares. So if I clear off all the umbrellas, let's clear them off. I'll zoom in, if I may, just to illuminate what we're seeing, because it's hard to see, isn't it? So let's just zoom in. There you go. That makes sense, doesn't it? Now you can see people. Not only can you see people, you can see abstract shapes of tables and chairs. And I say abstract because that's really what they are. They're very strange shapes. They don't look like tables when they're in shadows at all. So chairs can kind of look like little backs, little square shapes that are sort of at an angle with usually 2 or 3 legs. You can't really see all 4. So that would be a shape for a table, a chair. And then a person sitting there, if you look, they're very, very sort of like a bell pepper person. There's a bell. Then it's got 2 little carrots for legs. And then a little carrot for an arm. And so that's how I'm going to draw some people, tables, and chairs. If you wanted to get it looking more like what we're seeing, that would be for studio painting. It would take you a lot of time. So I'm going to show you my way of doing this, which is quicker, a lot easier, I think. I hope. Anyway, you can, oh, I zoomed out too far. Let's go back in. There we are. That's better. So there's my umbrellas. So below it on the street level, I'm going to do various little squares, little rectangles. That's a table. That's a table. And I keep them all sort of similar level. Put some closer together. It's a bigger group of people. As they go away from me, they'll get smaller. So little tape. These are just ideas. Sometimes you just see the tablecloth. It's a white cloth. That's all you see. Don't even see the table. Just the tablecloth. So these are just tablecloths. Now for the people, let's just draw a couple of people walking around. I'm going to draw a bell pepper person. So it starts off with a bell shape. That's a little bell. And then a couple of carrots for the legs. There's a person. Okay, that's simple. Please don't try to draw it looking like someone because it's just not the scene for that. There's another bell, this time a little bit lower down because this person's sitting down, enjoying the view. Probably got their yacht moored up, so they're having a lovely dinner or a cocktail or something, and there he is sitting there, and next to him is his wife, who's reminding him that they've got to get some gifts for some various people. And so now we've got a little story. And so I move on. I'm going to put another bell pepper person. This time it's the waiter. I'm going to make his legs a little bit thinner. There he is. And I'm going to give him a white triangle for his shirt. And then later I'll paint him in black so he will look like a waiter, and maybe a little tray with bottles. There we go. So he's busy taking things out. I really don't need to put so much in because you can see now these look like people so easily. So let's just dot, make bell shapes. If you're really stuck on this, just draw this little bell shape. Look, little bell, very simple. Put a head on the top, little circle on the top, and then in front of it, two little carrots. He's sitting down now. A little sheet, various other bells, some a bit higher. These are your bell pepper people, and after a while you'll really get used to it. Now as they go off, they probably get thinner, smaller. You can draw carrot people. You see, it's just a carrot, a little triangle with a small head on the top, and then every now and then someone sitting down, a little bell pepper person next to the carrot. And you see, it's already looking like a busy little scene. And I didn't try to copy what I'm seeing. I just made up my little story. Okay, so I urge you to do the same, and the less you think about it, the better for your painting, for your enjoyment. And again, I always say that the more you do of these little characters, the better you're going to get. And if you need an instruction on it, I think there's hundreds of videos out there on YouTube about drawing carrot people. Jean Hayes was the one who came up with them. She's probably got a video out there. See how she does it, and you'll have the full picture. There they are, my carrot people on holiday. Wonderful. So give you a minute or two to get there. If you've done the carrot people or you're still working on it, don't worry. Those who've done it, you can put in a few more windows, perhaps here and there, just to fill up some spaces. You might see some ornamental things like the flowers hanging in the windows on one or two of these hotels. You could draw that. That'll be great. And then finally, we move to the last moment in the drawing, which is boats. Now, I've been very lucky over the last couple of weeks. I've been drawing boats, a lot of boats. The boats are a challenge. So we've had quite a few challenges in this scene already. Perspective, and then probably architecture from a different culture to yours. And it's always nice to see how other people build because it makes for interesting, fresh paintings for sure. But boats are always difficult. So when you're doing a boat, very important to get them level and flat on the water, unless it's a storm in the painting, which is different. But in this scene, it's very, very tranquil. There's no unnecessary movement in the water beyond the breeze and a ripple. So that makes for boats which are very still and static. And so what we need to address is first how they're sitting on the water. And this boat, as you can see, it's pretty much level to the eye level. So the little pier that is wandering off to the right here or going towards the boats to the left brings you to the halfway point in the picture. It's about there. Find the halfway point, and that's where the first bow of the boat is in the water. The stern of the boat is a little bit further back to the right. There it is. So you can see now, there's my placement. The first boat you will see is the biggest boat because you see an uninterrupted view of it. Now, as you come out from the pier, wherever you put the bow, take a level line, i.e. it's straight, horizontal, use a ruler, whatever you want. And there you go. It now looks like it's floating because we're going to put the back of the stern of the boat on. And these beautiful modern sailing yachts, look at the angle of the stern. It's cut away like a different idea to old boats. You can see it's like a semicircle and it's cut at a funny angle. So that's a trick to learn. The center line is therefore there. It's pointing that way in perspective. Then you're going to bring a slight bow from the back of the stern to the bow at the front. A nice long. Now, if you have to sharpen your pencil, please sharpen your pencil because this is always when you're. I'll just get my sharpener. Whenever you're drawing boats, a sharp pencil is the only way, really, because you're going to struggle with symmetry involved otherwise. So I'll do that now. Go, a nice pointy pencil. So the water line is straight. It's buried in shadows anyway, so don't worry, it will change. But as we get from the bow, sorry, the stern to the bow, it's a gentle washing line curve. Like so. And then a very, I'm going to say the point on this is it's not that sharp, you know. There we go. So there's my millionaire's yacht. Beautiful. Oh, how nice it would be to have that. And then on top of it, you've got a little cabin that's very streamlined with a couple of little slots for windows. Gone are the porthole days, so don't draw a porthole unless it's something you like to do on your boats. There it is. And then we have a very, very tall mast. Now, in my experience, these masts much longer than the boat. So you could use a brush handle or a ruler. I like to use a brush handle, and I'm just going to draw a very straight line. And it's further than halfway along my yacht. I'm going to call it my yacht. There we go. And then I just draw another little line. I've got to reserve this as a light because otherwise it will disappear. And you could draw it or paint it as a black line, and it does actually work. But I think if you can reserve it as a line of lighter tone, it actually glows better for your boat. It looks good. But if it goes wrong, which sometimes it does, you do have a second option, just paint it black. And you'll see that there's a mast cable from the top of the mast to the bow, which has, it's the spinnaker, isn't it? And it's got a sail wrapped within its wrapping. That is black. So I'll paint that sail black and I'll keep this white or grayish. So there we are. And then on top of this boat, there's like a little dinghy or lifeboat sitting on the top there. That's nice. And then I'll move on to the next yacht. Now, there's probably half a dozen or so yachts. I'm only going to draw as many as I need to fit the page. So I might only do 3 or 4. We'll see. So there's one. Once you've got the first one, I think you're doing really well because the next lot that are moored next to it, they go away to the left. Now, you've got to be really careful with the perspective, as I've said. If you did it in a straight line, I guess it would work, but have a look at this as I put the color a line on it in. I'm going to do it in green just to make the point. This is the water line where the reflections are. Do you see what it's doing? It's tilting up to the left. Tilting up ever so slightly, isn't it? And remember that the little pontoon for the mooring is also tilting up to the left. So it's sympathetic to the angle of the wall as it goes away. But it starts here where the bow of the stern of the boat goes into the water. So tilt along upwards to the left. Do you see? There you go. And then onto those, we're going to sit various little rounded shapes. These are these sort of horseshoe shapes that modern boats seem to have at the back, little horseshoes. I'm going to do 3 or 4 of these. I'm going to squash a few, make some a bit smaller, some a bit bigger. I'm honestly not going to try my best to copy what I'm seeing. I'm just copying the feel. Some will be a little bit lower, so that's a smaller boat. This one I'm going to make it a bit taller and then make it turn a little bit more towards the right. This one I'll turn it more towards the left. And so in that way, I can have a bit of fun making the boats feel natural because they don't just sit there in a line, they move. They're not like parked cars, they're moored boats. So they will move around a little bit. So there's 4 in a row, and then I'll just put another boat going the other way a little bit, just to finish off the ideas somewhat. So a little boat there. Now, I'll also need some cabins on the other boat, so various little cabin shapes. I call this embroidery because you're just knitting away at ideas. I'm not really copying anything much other than the feel of various cabins. You could put some people. There might be a carrot person wandering about amongst all of the boats. There's one there. There he is. That's the captain. And now I'm going to do a few more masts. So using my trusty Hake brush, I'll draw another couple of masts. One there. Do another one here. And then last but not least, one over there. And then I'll check out the masts in the real photograph to see if there's a pattern I've missed. I don't think so, but I have missed the boom sail here, which is like a big carrot going off to the right. It's painted in black, so that will be, sorry, it's colored black, so I'll paint it like that. It'll look great. So there's my boom, my other boats. I'll put another person down here. I do like to fill gaps with people because they're just as, they're fun. And I've probably said to you before, make your carrot people look like they're falling over and it'll feel more like they're on a boat because, if they're, if they're just straight, they'll work as well, but don't try to make them perfect. It's nice if they stumble about a bit on the water. Now, these things I'm drawing here, these curious wooden things, are the pontoons, the little floats for the walkway. And then we're through with the drawing, 99%. Some artists really like to have everything drawn in the reflection. I find it a bit tedious, to be honest, but just to give you the most important thing that you should draw in the reflection, the hulls of these boats are reflected. When we do the painting, they will look either white or a grey colour of the boat. So that's not a bad idea, just to capture a feeling of where the white of the boat is reflected. After that, I only really look for the color changes. And what I mean by that, I think I spoke about this the last time we met. This color building here is lighter than the others. So this one's special because it's contrasting in the reflection. So that one I'll map, and this one. Remember, I've only put two of these lighter buildings in anyway. If you've put more than two, you'll need to put more of a reflection in. Okay, so find those buildings. There's one of them. That's going to reflect here. One. So that's nice. And then the other one, I think was it that one? I can't remember. I've lost my place on it. I'll make it that one. Doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So maybe I'll make it a bit further across. I'll make it this one. A little bit of variety. So there's my two lighter ones. And then I've got this amazing pink awning over here. I really want to make something of that. And I just look for its reflection, and it's going to start down there. So the pink one's going to go there. So I think that's the plan. And then the last thing is, this one is my favorite way of knowing where I am in my painting of reflections. I mark the sky. The sky is a reflection in the water as well. And look, it's this blue area down here, this blue area. So there we go. So I'm going to put some light blues down there. Other than that, I think in this drawing, I've got everything that I need for the watercolor. So I'm going to pause at this point, and I'm going to come back to you in the studio to see how your drawing's working. As ever, there will be a small intermission where people can finish off any drawings they need to, or get a cup of tea or something. So I'm going to pause for now and see you back in the studio. Now. Okay, welcome back to the second part. And in this part, we're going to start off by painting our lightest lights. For this painting, I'm going to unify with my raw sienna, and I'm also going to use a Hake brush. The other brushes I'm going to use are a size 12 and a size 6 round. These are synthetic, and I think that's a sable, but this one's a synthetic sable. It's just stuff that I brought to hand. And then these two special effects brushes are just Chinese calligraphic brushes, quite cheap actually, but they're brilliant for little marks, especially in the water, etc., in the reflections. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to mix up a tea wash of raw sienna, so big brush and plenty of tea, and I'm just going to get going with this one. I'm going to paint some little cloud shapes. When you're painting clouds, just think dreamy clouds, big. They can be like little loaves of bread. I like to add a bit of pink into the cloud once I get going. So here's a bit of pink. Let's see if I can add a bit more pink so you can really see the pink. Oh, there we go. There's a bit of pink. If I put something under the board, you'll be able to see it a bit better. There you go. There's some pink. So there's like a feeling of the cloud. There we go. I'll also get some paper towel. Always good to have a bit of paper towel at the hand, in the hand ready. Cleaning my brush, picking up some blue, this time cerulean blue. And I'm going to paint the negative shapes in and around my cloud, thinking about my tree line first of all, because the tree line tells me where my parameter for the composition is and the sky. I'm not trying to be faithful to the photograph. In fact, I'm just playing really with the color. But if I see a bit of blue in the top there, I'll put a bit of blue. If I see a bit of blue over the roof, I'll put it in. So you can kind of see in the glimmer there that I'm doing that. And then what I'll do is I'll clean my brush, squeeze my brush, and I'm just going to tickle some edges. The paper I'm using today is 25% cotton Fabriano, and I think they call it 25. Anyway, it's actually not a bad paper for a watercolor effect, but I think that's fine. I think that's nice and impressionistic. I don't want a detailed sky because there's a lot going on in this painting. One other thing you could do if you're really wanting to get the grey of the cloud is you could take a little bit of, well, French ultramarine blue into your blue and add to it some pink. And you'll get a lavender grey. Do you see that? It's a lavender grey. And now I can populate the sky with some shadow shapes. And this is where you'll have fun adding depth to your cloud. But please don't try and draw particular clouds unless that's your thing and you like to paint clouds. This painting has enough going on. There's plenty in this one. So there's a couple of little ideas of grey notes on the white cloud. So there's still some white edges to my cloud. And now I've got a little bit of shadow here and there. And with that being said, I think that's enough. So I'm going to move on down. Okay. Now I'm going to leave that bluish color there because it could be useful later. But in the meantime, I'm going to make more of my raw sienna wash. I'm going to make another tea wash of raw sienna. And this is to unify my buildings. So I'm going to start by unifying the buildings. Now, unless there's anything that's white that you need to reserve, it could be like some windows or something that you want to reserve. Okay. Getting a little bit of blue mix in there, so I just cleaned that up. But here's my raw sienna. I'm just going to put this through, and I can reserve some lights in windows. So I just paint around some of those windows. Why not? You can do that even with a big brush. And it just gives you one more little job to do as you meander around the architecture looking for places to paint. The other thing to bear in mind is this mast, or any masts actually. You don't really want to be painting in your masts if you can help it. If you do paint into them, then simply lift it out while it's still wet, and I don't think you're going to have much of a problem at all. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, these are going to be blue-grey. Why is he putting the golden colour over the top? Well, the reason is I'd like to unify my painting, and I don't paint all of it. You can see I'm kind of leaving some patches of white. That'll give me a nice distressed feel when I put the ultramarine greys and lavender colours over the frontage of the building. So there will be a bit of variation in the second wash. That will be nice. But again, I must remember not to paint over my masts. And if I do paint over them by accident, I can always use my paper towel to lift it out. And if you train yourself to be diligent in the first wash, it's likely that it'll follow through in the second. Now, there is one little white umbrella. I like that. It's sort of framed in the dark. So I'll just paint around that as well. There's not much I'm reserving in the light, but that little white umbrella speaks to me for some reason. So I'm going to reserve it. Okay. And I'd urge you to do similarly as you bring your colours down to the harbour wall. Now, when it comes to the boats, I don't see in this painting that golden colour on the boats. They're more white and lavenders. So I'm not going to paint those. But what I will do is I will now start to put a little bit of this raw sienna into the water, because there is this feeling of one building and another which has that golden glow. So I just paint that in. If you see it anywhere else as well, you might see a little bit of a golden glow, for example, here and there. That's fine. Look how dark it looks at this point. So we should remember this, that things will dry lighter. And as you're doing all of this hard work, just check your sky is doing what you wanted it to do. And if not, soften wherever it may need. But mine's okay on the whole. So I'll just soften the edges here as well. Even if I'm not sure it's necessary, in reflections, I'm uber careful, probably overly careful for some. It's just the way I am. But I just take a bit of water on a clean brush. So that's damp now by squeezing it. And watch as I just soften these transitions to make the tea wash fade out to water. Okay, that's good. That's great, because it means I can go into my second wash. Now, in the second wash, I'd like to think about some of the orange notes in the painting as well. So I'm going to get some orange going. I'm keeping my brush rather big, aren't I? So if you want to drop down to a size 12, you can do. This is fine. But while it's still damp, I'm going to float in a little bit of orange into these edges of my reflections. 1, 2, 3, almost like cricket posts or wickets. You know, I put 3 lines like this and flutter the brush around a little bit too. This is a nice idea. And we get this feeling of the reflection. It's called running in, when you put wet through wet and you're running the colour. You can tilt your board as well to make that orange more obvious as it runs. I like to keep things soft at the and wet at the edge when I'm doing this running in. So I very often clean my brush, tap it, and just let it run. It all depends on your paper's qualities. No, I didn't say the quality of paper, the qualities of your paper about how this will react. So you have to watch, because my paper might react differently to yours. And now I'm going to put a bit of orange going across the, what I'm going to call the waterline there. That's good. And I'll also put some here as well. I'm painting sideways. Now this, funnily enough, is the below the reflections of my boat. Remember, I drew my boat, and then I drew a reflection line of the boat, and the same with these ones. And now I start below that, and I filter a little bit of that orange between the boats, just a little bit. So I've got a gap between the boat and its reflection and this orange note. Now, the orange is one of the lightest colors in the water reflection. So even if you go to coffee thickness, as long as you soften its edges as you go, it will work. But please remember that when you're putting in your reflections, they are vertical. They're a mirror image, aren't they? And that's so important to remember because if you start to stray, which is easily done, I have to say, I'm often doing that with architecture and reflections. If you stray too much, i.e., you go off at an angle like this, it will not look realistic, and the eye of the beholder will see it and start to not trust anymore. And that's a dreadful place to be with something as easy as reflections. They are really easy when you get the knack. Now I'm going a bit stronger with the orange. This is now what I'm going to call milky thickness. I'm just going to run a little bit more in while it is still wet. And this time it's more like Morse code. I'm doing dots and dashes as it goes down. See that? I'm not trying to paint a line. Although every now and then a little line won't hurt. It's just I want it to be a little bit more broken. That's good. I like that. Now, do you see any orange in the buildings above? If you do, then let's put that in while we've got it on our brush. And I'm going to start by putting in a little bit on my awnings. There's quite a few orange awnings. Now, while I put these in, I want to give you a little bit of advice about putting colour on awnings. That's a pink one, so I won't do that. And as I put the orange in, and this is milky thickness, I clean my brush and then squeeze my brush, and then I tickle the top edge of that orange line to lighten it somewhat, just ever so lightly, because there's such a thing as the fall of light. So even on a canopy that's the light's hitting, it will gradually get just a little bit lighter as it goes back. Okay, hope that's helped because now we're going to start to put some other colors into our running in. Now for the running in, we will need blue grays. And so you have that lavender color. Remember that that was a bit of French ultramarine blue, tea wash. So let's make plenty of this. French ultramarine blue. Add to that a little bit of pink, not too much, and you'll get a lavender color. This is going to look wonderful between your orange. So notice as I bring this in to the painting now, I'm going to bring this down between the orange in little runs, little runs. I might actually start it off with some cerulean blue as well. That's cerulean blue. Let's just bring some of that into it as well, just to bring in some light. Because the sky that is reflected, and I did mention this in the beginning, this line, a wave, where there's ripples of sky blue. So that's where this color is going to find it unifies along this line. But it also joins this band of running in lavender color. And if it's becoming a problem for you because it's starting to dry, use your atomizer. Making sure it's, there we go, it's running. That will soften the edges for a bit longer. And now, as I bring my blue through the painting, that's better. It gave me a little bit more time to achieve these softer transitions. And so now, as I fill this area with blue at the bottom because this part's where the sky is reflected from above. And you can lift out as well if any bit of that process got a little bit too much. That's not looking too bad. I'm just going to soften some edges. This is another way to get those transitions looking as if they're reflections. I just soften. It's not looking too bad. Now, while I've got this blue color, I'm going to put some of this onto the whole of my boat. Now, remember the boats are sitting there moored together and they have a blue note. I'm going to paint that, and I'm also going to paint that into the reflection underneath the boat. Like so, that was good. But notice I left at the back of the boat, even in the reflection, this horseshoe of white. That's really very important because that's going to give me, and of course yourself, more depth in the reflection because that white will also reflect into and between the boats. So you're going to now need to find each hull of the boat with a bit of blue. You see the gaps between them. Fill it with blue to begin with. It won't all be blue though. That would be too easy. And then bring a little line down into the reflections. This line is the space between the boats. And I will pick up a bit of lavender as well because this line does start to come through, and you might change brush. I'm happy with the size 6 when I'm doing these kind of maneuvers. And this is just lavender colored paint, and I'm just going between my boats there, knowing that there's a little dark gap between them where the reflection of the shadow is. See, I just put a bit of lavender just to be sure, and then bring that down into, well, next to the orange or whatever's reflecting. See that? And keep these also vertical. Very important to keep these things vertical. And you'll probably see that even in the blue areas, the blue bands, you might see lavender lines existing or even darker. So if you need to go darker, which I do now, go
Is it just us or is it John? It's John.
I think it's John.
It is John. Yeah,
I've lost it as well.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not us. I wondered if there's something wrong with my
No,
computer.
I think
It's
it's
going to
him.
happen very easily.
I think it's him.
I wonder if
Yeah.
he knows. He probably doesn't know.
Dear.
He's probably chatting away.
Exactly. I don't know what we can do quite.
There's not much we can do.
Can we send him a note in the
Message
chat?
him or put a reaction up.
Message genre, I suppose. Maybe.
He'll be back.
He's going to be so upset when he finds out. Oh, he's going to know because he won't see any of us doing anything, will he?
Right, you're unmuted.
No, the mouse one, please. John, we can't see you. John, we can't see. None of us can see you.
I don't think he can hear us either, love.
He's put us all on mute and gone for a sleep. Hope he comes back soon. Can you open that curtain? Can you open that curtain, Jim? He's gone. Open the curtain. What are you doing?
Keep away from you because you're very nasty.
I'm not being nasty. I am not.
Philippa,
Yeah,
Carol, we can hear you.
yeah, I know. We can't even see the picture now, can we?
No.
I wonder what's happened. It's not like John.
Think he can see us?
Do you?
I don't know. What about if we all waved?
We
He
could
might
try.
notice.
I sent a WhatsApp just in case he can
Yeah, I
see.
saw that.
I tried to send a chat and I can't send one.
Try on the chat.
If we all raise our hands.
Can you come here a minute? Jim, I'm in a lot of pain and you're not helping. Jim, could you help me, please?
He's just sent a message
Oh,
I'm not. I'm shutting up.
saying that he's trying to get back in. The Zoom dropped out.
Stop it. Stop it.
I'm not being aggressive.
You are.
They heard you say that
Good.
on the chat. You put it. Are you there, John?
No, his Zoom's dropped out. Philippa.
Has it?
Yeah, he's just sent a message saying he's trying to get back in.
Okay. Thank you.
no problem.
I'm not being nasty.
Says there doesn't seem to be any bandwidth. Just restarting the router. Getting all the WhatsApps that keep coming at me.
It's never happened to him before. You will be embarrassed.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Sorry about that. It just dropped out and literally it's only just come back. I don't know what happened.
We're all here waiting for you.
Sorry, well,
We're
thanks
all
for
waiting
patiently.
patiently.
Sorry, Philippa. I'm going to get straight back on. I don't understand it. The weather's perfect here. I can't blame the weather or anything. It just stopped and
Yeah.
tried about 5 times and started the router again, and now it's back again. So maybe it overheated. I don't know. Really sorry. Okay, so I'll get straight back in. Hopefully the screens are still working. Yeah, still working. Right. So
Oh, that's good.
there we
Thank
go.
you.
Thanks, Philippa. Right, so I'll mute everybody and then I'll resume the recording. I hope that hasn't messed things up for the recording, but we'll see. And right, so now we go back into recording. Here we go. So, don't know exactly what was happening there. We seem to have just stopped transmitting, but we were just putting in a coffee thickness to milky thickness wash of running in. So, if you recall, we just put some orange on top of raw sienna. Now, I've got to wet my paper up because it's dry. So there we go, a little blast of water. And then I'm going to pick up. This is a milky thickness. So it's just French ultramarine blue and a little bit of pink to make a lavender purple. And on my boat, main boat, there is a little purple to black lifeboat. It's very dark. It's the darkest thing in the picture, probably. And for whatever reason, it picks up very nicely as a reflection here. So at the bottom of the reflection of the hull of the boat, if that makes sense, do a little black line there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run in below that. Very small, thin, tenderous line. And if you saw how I did that, I'll just do it again on the other side of it because there seems to be two of these lines. They're just like little zigzags, Z shapes. And sometimes they break and sometimes they start again. But you see, they all go downwards and they hit that line that we have of the sky reflected in the water. And so as we get to about there, then we can break it into smaller little units of little shapes like that. Okay. If you've done that, well done, because you just take that idea and we run with it into the next place. And it's literally finding smaller areas to let that running in occur. Okay. And these are the purple reflected shadows that you're seeing. So I'll carry on with that idea. Sometimes what I do is I like to make them go in one direction, sort of just going to the left a little bit, like so, and let them peter out. And then I'll do it again. So this bit is like knitting. You're just making some little runs which are going downwards, vertically. They go a little bit horizontal for a Z shape, but not much more than that. And you just locate the shapes and spaces where they're going to be. So, for example, this purpley blue color can now exist at the bottom of my boat here. And I bring that line to the pontoon walkway. And here is where I start to put a purpley blue shadow at the waterline. French ultramarine blue is a perfect shadow color. And with that little bit of crimson, it becomes like a violet. But as that then is reflected, please leave a little bit of the orange and then drop down below the orange and then start to knit some more purpley blue moments. And I'm just going to keep that going. I've got to stand up to make sure that these are going straight. Sometimes if you don't stand up, they go to the left or the right, whichever's your natural inclination. And that's not what we want. We want it to be closer to vertical. Okay. Now there's a lot of these, but what they are doing is they are framing the lights. Okay, so they're framing the lights. Here we go. And every now and then you'll see a bigger, wider one. If you wish to, you could use a different brush. Now I like to use these Chinese calligraphy brushes because they do one of two things straight away. They create a different mark, which I'm happy about because sometimes my marks become monotonous. But if you notice with these sort of brushes, because they're animal fur, this is goat, okay? What I can do is I can take the pressure off and I can do a smaller, do you see that, wider wiggle? And that's very nice as well. So I can sort of knit my runs together. Now, if it gets too dry, it's a problem. So I like to, every now and then, give it one spray, not more than one, because if you do more than one, I'm afraid it'll all start to bleed together and you will probably not enjoy what it does entirely. So, oh, and there's some pink here. So this is where I like to just put a bit of color. So I pick up a bit of pink. That's the pink up there. Do you remember there's a beautiful pink awning? So I put that in first of all to remind myself where it's going to be. And then I start to bring the pink into the running in. That's gorgeous. And so now I'm bringing a different color into the whole scene. So I'm going pink, so I've got orange, I've got a bit of the yellow colors. I've got my blue, my light blue. And then I carry on with this lavender color. The lavender color, as I said midway when the zoom dropped out, is French ultramarine blue. I'm going a bit stronger now with a little bit of crimson. Looks like a purpley lavender color. And I'm just going to start to see if there's other places where I can run it in. This time I'll go a bit stronger. Do you notice it's getting a bit stronger? So I'm going to sort of creamy thickness. I'm putting less water and the mixture's getting stronger. And now using this little brush, I know this rather large brush, I'm putting thinner wiggles. As I put these thinner wiggles in, they become more interesting because they've got more of a definite stroke. There's an ebb to them. They feel more like they're water-like reflections. At least that was the hope. And then as I get towards the bottom here, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to join these ones into those ones. Do you see that? I'll do that again so you can see it. I'm going to join these ones into those ones and then back again. I'll do that again. I'm going to join these ones into those ones and then back again. As I get further out, what I'll do is I'll start to make bigger, broader waves. Do you see that? Isn't that lovely? And so I'll do that again over here. Because what I'm trying to encourage you to do with this element of the water is to bring some waves across like so. Do you see that? And look, it's reflecting all of that gorgeous warmth in the water. And then I'll do some smaller little waves. There we go, as they come towards me. And these are quite quick. Sometimes they're just little movements like that. Did you see that? Let's try it again, this time weaving over this side a little bit. So I'm going to take some of these little ebbs and flows, I'm going to join into them, and then I'll bring some of them over and join. And then do that again. And you see, it gives a feeling of water. It's a little bit different to the resource, but I'm using the resource as a springboard because I want to get a feeling of the movement across to my boats as well. So here we go. Remember, you've got all of these little wiggly ones, and you can actually go darker with some of those, go a little bit stronger at the edge. See that? So these are small little framed reflections. And then take this colour and start to wiggle across, joining that bit into that bit and then back again. And then we'll make some waves. And there we go, that looks great. It's important not to overdo it, but we can add a little bit more here as well. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. Because what I want to do eventually is to frame the light. Now, this roof up here, I don't know if you've already started to put some colour into it, but this one's going to be quite dark. I'm painting it now just to show you that this one is going to reflect very dark down here. So this area has a lot of purple. There we go. And there we are. So I'm starting to make this reflection just that bit bigger and darker there. Good. Right. Well, I'm almost done with the water. There will be a few other things I'm going to do to that later, but for now, I have to attend to the buildings because they're not doing quite as well as they were because they're only on the first wash. So this is where I will go back to the size 12 brush, clean that up, dry that up a little bit. Remember not to paint into the masts. That's the only thing that we really need to wonder about is painting into the masts. Don't do it. Reserve them. And so now I'm going to mix a blue-grey. Now the blue-grey can begin with any blue. So cerulean blue is fine. You can add French ultramarine blue. That's also good. I'm making a mix which is milky thickness, so it's a little bit wet. You see that? But when I lift it, it doesn't run very quickly. It's not like tea. That's perfect. To that, I'm going to add some grey. So this is either neutral tint or Payne's grey, whichever you prefer, and you make like a Prussian blue. That's perfect. It's a lovely color. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to paint the fronts of my houses with that color. So let's start with this little funny house sitting on the stilts. And as I paint around the front, I'm painting around the windows, so I reserve the lights. A little bit like what I'm trying to do is what Edward Seago is doing. I'm framing the lights in my windows so that the shape becomes a negative space, which is useful because I can then paint the depth between the atmosphere in the window and the frame. So that's good. That's working okay. Just tilt the light so you can see it. Yeah, that looks okay. It's not too bad. And into that, you can add more French ultramarine blue, you know, drop into it a little bit of stronger blue, and you'll get a feeling of some of those textures if you wish. But I will just continue with that first wash of blue just to frame the windows. So I'm going to paint around my windows. And because it's old, it's a very old building, the paint might be distressed. So I'll just have fun. Maybe leaving some textures here and there where I don't fill all of the space. I don't always feel inclined to paint everything one flat color. That's what I'm trying to say, because if I do that, as opposed to not doing that, it would be dull because it just becomes one flat blue. So now I've got to there, I'm going to add a little bit of purple, a little bit of violet into the blue, just to change the note, because it just feels a little bit more of a violet color on that particular building. Maybe a different manufacturer's paint was used to paint the surface. And it's similar color, but not quite the same. I'm also going to paint this roof up here because I noticed that that's a very similar blue. Some of the roofs have a brown tone and some are sort of orangey, but this one is a more of a blue tone, so it's similar color. So I just put it in. And I will let my eye dart around the scene to find similar colors. It just so happens that the next block in the center, very similar colors. And this is where you have to remember not to paint over your mast. And although if you paint over the mast, it wouldn't be the end of the world, it just makes us a slight difference. You know, the more competent, relaxed painter is not likely to paint over the mast. Whereas the anxious novice who is rushing a little bit, they're likely to make that error. And it doesn't mean that the professionals don't make errors. They do all the time. It's just knowing what to do when such a thing occurs, not to panic, and certainly to try to avoid it, you know, if possible. There we go. Now I might just give mine one more little spray. Don't worry about little marks from the spray in the in your painting. It doesn't make much of a difference, and if anything, actually, what I think it might offer to your painting is an atmosphere, a texture, something that you couldn't paint. So it's interesting. But if you overspray, overuse the bottle on these surfaces, it'll bleed and you'll wish you hadn't bothered. So be careful not to overdo it. Have you noticed I'm painting around my mast? It's nice. It's good to do that. And I know that the blue's going to get more dark and probably a bit more violet in this one. So a bit more violet. This palette has the violet blue and this one's just really a grey blue. So I'm varying the ideas now just so that you can see. Going to paint some little abstract windows, if I may, up here. I didn't draw them in, but it's nice to just be able to paint some shapes and suddenly a window will appear and it's like, wow. There it is. Doesn't look bad. Now, as I come down, I do notice that the purple probably gives way to more pinks and browns a little bit. So you could play with those ideas. A little bit more pink in the purple. It's all welcome. Everything that you add to your painting as a sort of, well, a little bit of diversity in the purple pinks, and then the unified value. That's what's going to lock it all together. So I'll go back to the blue again now. This is French ultramarine blue for the bottom of the wall there. It gets very dark in there, and so what I will probably do is go over that in the dark pass with a darker blue grey. But for now, I'm just looking for blues and violets. I will bring back the sienna orange browns, so don't worry if you're thinking, oh, he's not done those siennas yet. Is he going to do it? I will. I'll definitely do them. This is a bit more pink in my purple. You see, the pink has become, the violet has gone to a purple crimson shade. And so, like I say, a little variation. It's nice. Yeah, that has helped, I think. Some more French ultramarine blue with a bit of grey. So that's my blue grey. So in a way, I've got a cool blue grey and a warmer blue grey. So this is quite an interesting distinction. And I'm just going to paint, I'm going to make up a little bit on this building, if I may, because what has happened in this painting is, as I've abbreviated many of the shapes, I've lost a little bit of that blue building on the edge. It doesn't matter though, it'll still work. But I think I've now come to a conclusion there. So I'm going to move palette colors now to browns and oranges. So this was my raw sienna and orange. So let me just reinstate that. There's orange. If I add to this some burnt sienna, which is a red brown, it will make very little difference, but it'll look more golden. This will be great for painting atmosphere. You see how it can go into the shapes below the umbrellas. I'll probably add into it a touch of grey. So that's Payne's grey. You see what it does? It makes like an umber, but it's more transparent than umber. And so now I will put a little bit of this around my carrot people. So I'm painting as if I'm trying to create atmospheres underneath the awning. I'm also still trying, apparently, not to paint into the masts. If you need a smaller brush, then so be it. You have to decide which brush is your friend for each job. The key is normally that you should use the biggest brush you are able to handle in the space you're in for as long as possible. Gives your brushwork a freshness, makes it feel more competent. All of these good things that the best watercolorists seem to be able to do. That's what we aim for. So if you need a small brush though, like I'm using, just do it. It's not like you're cheating or that you're letting yourself down. It's natural. But I kind of like the big brush for the obvious reason it's quick. And although it's not about being the tortoise or the hare, speed isn't about watercolor so much as getting a looseness. And I just feel that the bigger brush gives me a looser connection somehow to the painting. So that's my reasons, or what I'm trying to show. Painting around my waiter. Now there's my carrot people as they stand out as a light contrast. That doesn't mean to say though necessarily that I can't put darker carrot people in the shadows. I can, and I will. But I didn't need to draw them. Honestly, they will happen, you'll see, with but a brush stroke. But a brush stroke. Now, while I've still got this brown, I'm going to put this along the harbour wall. I might use a little bit of dry brush just to create some textures, but there is a light line, which is the pathway, the walkway, that I'm not going to paint into for obvious reasons, because it'll flatten my picture. But as I meander around my boats into the area where the sailors are jumping about, throwing cables and ropes, and no doubt talking to each other about what they're going to do tomorrow or later today, where they're going, this sort of thing. Amongst this excitement, there is a harbour wall behind which frames the activity. So this stage is unifying that harbour wall. But notice as I do it, I don't paint into my masts, I don't paint into my characters. I keep the story fresh and alive, and that's the aim, at least. And it's coming together. Good. Now, it seems I've forgotten a few things, so let's quickly amend that, shall we? Go back to the orange stage, which is, there's orange, just orange. And I need to paint around. Now, you'll probably see variations in the orange on these building fronts. So it might be a pinkish orange in some, if you're using an iPad, for example, might look a little bit different to maybe on an Android or what's the other computers, the Microsoft or whatever. So vary your orange pink mixture, but the idea is to paint around those textures with what I would describe as a coffee thickness. I'm not going to milky thickness straight away on this one, because I can use that for the patinas around the window frames. Because I think that the sienna coloured buildings they have more light. So I'm trying to reserve the light as much as possible. Here we go. So I'm just painting around some of my little window frames. I don't mind that. You see that? There's quite a mess around the mast. I'm happy with that, because at least the mast will stand out. Okay, and then I go on to the next building out. It seems somehow that I've put a couple of buildings in the wrong place. I'm always doing this, but I'll carry on. I'm just going to put some more orange ones in. There we are. And then I'm going to put some orange also underneath these blue buildings, because there's a lot of wood in this structure, and that orange definitely will help convey that. There's some white areas, so I won't paint into those, perhaps. And now I'm going to put a little bit of orange underneath those overhangs, because there's some atmosphere there. And so on the white buildings, I put the orange, and then on the orange buildings, I'm going to go into brown. So this was burnt sienna into orange, but now I'm going to go into burnt umber, or raw umber if you have it. I've got raw umber. This is a great color for shadows. So watch as I now put a bit of shadow underneath this building. A little bit of shadow. You probably can't see it because it's still wet, but if I lift it up, you'll see that there we are, a bit of shadow. And maybe also a window in brown, or two. And then some windows over here. So I'm just going to dot in windows with the brown while I have it, because it's the perfect color for that. Other things which I haven't done, which I should have done. Chimneys. Well, that's orange first of all. So I cleaned my brush. I'll put some orange on my chimneys. Orange or burnt sienna is going to be fine. These are the sort of colors that will frame for the chimneys. So how many chimneys have you got? You need to put them all in now with the orange. That's good. I do a few dormer windows. And have you got any roofs that are orange? This one definitely was orange. So I'm going to put that one in with the orange right now. That looks good. Any others? Oh, no, just that chimney. And that's fine. Now I've got those chimneys in, I'm going to put some purples on my other roofs because I haven't finished all the roofs. So we're gradually getting through what I would call the middle values into dark middle values. But until I've got all of these milky thickness middle values in their place, so the roofs now, I just put them in. I'll probably put a bit of purple, red purple, and then blue violets on some of the roofs. But keep it perhaps to a middle value. Don't go any darker if you can help it, because if you go any darker than middle value, it will not work very well in a tonal range, because we need to go darker in places. So middle value, which is milky thickness. There we go. So the roofs look good now. Any other roofs? Yep, this one here. So you dot about quite a lot in a painting like this, trying to find your way through the roofs and the structures. But as long as you follow the middle values now, you can see it's all filled in with middle values. That's good. It's not working badly at all. I'll check the chat. Let's just see what's going on there, see if everybody's okay. Just a couple of people dropping out because of dinners and things, so I totally understand. I'm going to send the video to all of those people. If you're still able to continue with me, fantastic, because I'll carry on. I'm going to put in my dark accents now. So that was all the middle values. Actually, in this stage, I would put some windows in as well. So I could take some dark blues, maybe add some grey. So there's a grey. That's Payne's grey. And I just put some windows in. Now, when I put my windows in, I like to just put a grouping of, say, 6 dots together sometimes. And that looks like old-fashioned windows. But in other places, what I will do is I'll just do what I call a line. It's just a little slot. So let's just do one over here. 1 slot, 2 slot, and it looks like a window. And over here, I'll do 3 slots. 1, 2, 3 in that dormer, for example. And what it does is it just tells the mind, the eye will tell the brain, oh, it's a window, because it's in the right place for a window and it's the right shape. But unless I've got a really good reason why not to, I will just usually put these little square slots with the smaller brush next to each other, 2 rows or 3 rows of 2. And they give you that very nice ancient window feel. Looks good. I'll carry on with a few more. And I would urge you to do the same. Now, there's a couple of windows which are different. There's some with like a reddish pink frame. I kind of like that. But would it look funny in the painting? Not sure, really. I'm going to do it just to see. If it doesn't look good for me, then you don't need to do it. So I'll just finish off the slots on this window. I'll just do some slots on this to speed things up. Looks like windows though. That's very nice. And then when I've done all of these, There we go. Looks like old windows to me. Once I've done that, I'm going to try that rather nice pink one, which is on this building. I'm just going to take some pink and I'm going to draw a little pink frame. Because who knows, it might give me something I never expected and might be able to use again in another painting. So I'm just doing a line with 2 crosses. And it just looks dark, but actually in the studio, it kind of works. I don't mind it at all. It's okay. So I'm going to finish off a few more windows. Windows take time. You know, it's like knitting. It's a glass of wine job. If you get a glass of wine and you just dot away at windows, but I think you get the idea. So there it is. There's all my windows. Now there are some very bright red canopies. Now this is cadmium red, and I'm going to put some red canopies now. I'm hoping that when I put these umbrellas in red as well. Wow. You see, there's a bit of power in those reds. There's also a couple of umbrellas which are filled up on the quayside there. So I'll just paint those in as well. It all helps. Everything helps. And I can see that those red bits run into the water as well. Very nice. And so whenever I see a color that will reflect nicely, I'll add that in as well. Now, we have all, I think, apart from my sausage people and bell pepper people, I've got all my middle values in and I'm ready for the darks. Just the trees and the sausage people. For the sausage people, here's a cheats method. Take orange, creamy thickness with a bit of pink, and you now have skin tones. And just paint the heads, the hands on your carrot people. Dots, just little dots, that'll work fantastically. And maybe some legs, because there's always somebody wearing shorts, probably a Scotsman, Scottish sailor. Always seem to have shorts on in Scotland, don't they? These guys, even in the cold. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some green jumpers on because I'm going into green next. This guy's green. Maybe a yellow. I've not used any yellow. Let's have a bit of yellow. So I'll put a yellow jersey on that guy and have fun just using colour. Pink jacket on that lady, some black trousers, some blue trousers, some brown trousers, whatever you feel is appropriate. My waiter is going to have a black jacket. There we go. There's the waiter. Anybody else? Oh, I'm going to make this guy wear a black jacket and trousers because there's always a lot of people wearing certain colors, blues, blacks, creams, browns, this sort of thing. And then I will put with my dark brown, this is burnt umber, a couple of people in the shadows. These are the carrot people in the shadows. And I just dot around with some brown. I've gone off piste a little bit with the people. I'm going to put some chairs in, a couple of shadows under the table with dark browns. I'm always admiring the work of some of the modern watercolorists like Alvaro Castagne, Joseph Subvich, who will put wonderful atmospheres in these scenes. So be reminded of playfulness in the shadows, lots of browns and characters running about. That looks like a very busy scene now. And we're ready to put the trees in. Don't forget your trees. I'm just putting some skin tones on my sailors. Sailors always wear shorts. They're fine. Right, green. Haven't done any greens yet, but we'll do it. So in this process, what I've done is lights and middle values, and now I'm framing towards the darks. But before I can do that, middle value green. So I'm just going to use sap green. It's straightforward and easy. Filling in the gaps. And while I've got that sap green, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a slightly darker green. So sap green with a bit of brown. Not a lot, just a little bit. It's in the distance. The light in this particular scene is coming from above and the left. So your trees will have a shadow on the bottoms and the right. You see that? On the bottoms and the right. And failing that, just have fun putting some dark moments in. And that will look like trees in the background. You don't have to do a lot. Finally, he says, we're going to move now to the dark side. Okay, so now I'm just going to add Payne's grey into my brown, maybe even a bit of brown here and there as well. And I'm going to start with painting shadows. These shadows are going to be on all of the dormer windows on the right-hand side, going to the roof. Remember, I showed you Edward Seago. He did the same. He put these little shadows on the side of the dormers, like so, and they pop out. I'll also be making an effort to put shadows, not just on the side of the dormer windows, but on the overhanging or underhanging roofs, just here and there, like lines. For example, there. Let me lift it up so you can see the effect. There's the shadow there on this roof. Hanging over is a shadow here and here, and into the windows, maybe some little shadows. On the side, the right-hand side of my chimneys, I will also put shadow. See that? That really builds the effect. Make sure that if you've got little chimney pots, you put shadows on the side of those as well. That really helps. On the right-hand sides, that's where you're going to find the shadows on the chimney pots, and any roof that is overhanging or in front of the building is going to have that shadow. So I'm having a bit of fun now, just putting these shadows in here and there. Sometimes very thin shadows as well, because the wall plate is very thin on some of the buildings, and then on some other buildings it's thicker. I'm also going to put shadows on the side of the walls, and I'm just doing it with this dark color because it will work. There we go. So my buildings are really popping out now. There we go. See that effect happening? Take this, it's a creamy brown and Payne's grey, or creamy brown and neutral tint. And now I'm going to go in and paint some abstract shapes around my wonderful scene of holidaymakers in their favorite little restaurants and cafes, waiting for some simmering nourishment in the form of a wonderful French cuisine, maybe a glass of red here and there, just to make the day complete. But look, I don't paint all of it, just knitting away, giving a little bit of a scene of atmosphere and depth, but nothing more than that. As I go further away from the viewer, smaller moments of dark, not so pressing. We don't want to pull them particularly in one direction or another. We just want them to feel happy to scan the scene. There's my little white umbrella. I just framed that nicely. Maybe I'll go a little bit darker on that building there. I just feel that that building is tucked away in the corner. It's a bit darker. Yes, that's better. And then finally we get to the end of the scene where we're going to put at the waterline a nice definite shadow, because there sure is a definite shadow meeting the waterline, framing the pontoons. Here we go. And if you're still with me now and you've got to that point, isn't that feeling better? You've got a little bit more atmosphere. I'll just do a little bit of dry brush on that wall. There we go. And I think that's it. I think we got what we wanted, but we just could push the values on the bottom of the boat a little bit more. So I'll give you a moment to get there, because I'm going to finish the painting off. And if you've got there and you're thinking, what else can I do while I'm waiting for others? You can clean your brush, dry your brush, and just tickle some of these overhanging shadows into the surface of the buildings. That can really convey depth much better than a flat, hard edge. That's what I tried to do, just to soften those, to make them blend a little bit. Right, so we're there. We're at that point. Is there anything really dark in the water? You might find there's a couple of little dark reflections, like down here, it's a little bit darker, maybe here. Maybe just down here, a bit more depth in the water reflection and the ebbs and the flow. But overall, we're really very close. I'll just put a bit more depth here and here and here, just to frame these colors a little bit. Now, that orange in the water is a bit too orange, maybe a little bit of brown here and there. Yep, that's good. Now I'm finally ready for the boat. So there's one boat that is more purple or more turquoise, I guess, as it meets the water. Have you got turquoise? If you have, I would use that. If you don't have turquoise, just use a little bit of blue and violet. And I'm just going to push, yeah, sumptuous bit of turquoise there into violet, because violet and turquoise can go very nicely together. Look at that, violet at the front, and a bit of turquoise. Yep, that's good. And then I clean my brush, tickle some edges, make sure that this is soft. I want that boat to really stand out, and it's starting to stand out. It's giving it more depth. Yep, that worked. And then finally, just a touch of black along the waterline of the boat where it meets at the pontoon there. And that's it. I think we got our scene. I'll paint the windows. Oh, I'm mixing a little bit of colour. Just one last thing. Now, as I paint my mast, this is a job really for when it's dry. When it's dry, paint the right-hand side of the mast. Not the left-hand side, because that's white. Just leave it white. Any of your masts, if you can just paint a little bit of a grey on the right-hand edge with a steady hand, they stand out much better that way. And there we are, another little painting from Honfleur. I hope you enjoyed this one. Sorry about the break in the transmission with the Zoom. That was a bit annoying. But other than that, I think we got through it, and we got another little scene of Honfleur. I'm just putting that furled black sail on the spinnaker there. That feels good. We've got it. We've got our scene. Thanks so much, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording there and let's see how you've done back in the studio.